Hey everybody, you're watching Call the Cornstar. 1 year ago, I started the biggest construction project that I have ever done. The 100% restoration of my $7,000 mansion. Over these last 12 months, we have completely gutted and rebuilt the entire inside of the existing house. And we gutted and rebuilt the entire existing basement.
We're following his leadership.
Yeah, I'm setting the form and he tells me whether it's good or not.
So this brings us to today. We have been building an underground movie theater addition on the side as well. And today, we are going to be filling it full of concrete. Well, not the underground movie theater part, but the walls. We're gonna be pouring the walls. The pumper truck just pulled in. He's 40 minutes early, so that way he can get everything all unfolded and ready. That way in 40 minutes, when the first concrete truck is supposed to show up, he can just back up and start pumping on him. So we're gonna let him do his thing, get all set up, and then I'm gonna walk around quick and do a last inspection on our straps to make sure that we have all of our wedges and supports in on everything. So that way we don't have any problems with our forms.
We'll play it by ear, see how it goes.
Okay, and if we get tired, we can always switch you on the joystick and you can run the vibrator. Now before we get started today, I want to apologize. You're gonna be spending some time on my forehead because I need both of my hands to work. We are pouring 14-foot tall walls. We have 130 yards of concrete. There's a lot that needs to be done. So I'm not always gonna have time to be able to set up a camera and get things into position. So you're just gonna be riding with me today for the most part. We're gonna get started in our back corner. I'm just inspecting every single one of these straps, just making sure there's a strap in the slot where they're supposed to be and making sure that there is wedge bolts inside of it. Sometimes you see the strap through, but there's no wedge bolts. Sometimes you see wedge bolts, but the strap is either down here or it's up here. So we need it to be in the slot and wedge bolted correctly. Good, good. Good. Ah, look at that. We found one. This one's super important too because it's at the bottom. See how it's down below? We'll pop these out, smack them up. Oh yeah, that one had some tension on it. Oh, look what we got here. Got another one. Roman! Do your snow dance.
What?
Do your snow dance. Make it stop.
No, not on the plank.
I hear concrete coming out. I got 20 more feet of wall to check. It's right here and then we're done. And then go help pour concrete. Okay. Sounds like mud just pulled in. They're gonna run the initial primer through the boom to get all the sludge and stuff cleaned out. See if we can catch this. Oh, they already got it done. Okay. He puts a bunch of soap and lubricants or something through there, so then that way he cleans everything out. And he has to get that out when he starts. We're gonna be running some hot water in this concrete today. So we see some steam coming off of it, that's why. Nice and warm. Okay, we're primed. All ready to go, Jeff? Yeah. I think we're gonna be getting a little snow. They're talking 1 to 3 inches. We got some nice big snowflakes coming down. It's already starting to turn things white a little bit. And we're just getting started, so hopefully this holds off until we get everything done. So that way we're not walking on those planks 14 feet off the ground when they're covered in a bunch of slush. But I guess if it does, it is what it is.
It is 25 degrees outside, and you can see how this hot concrete is steaming. It's melting all of our ice. You see it's already water.
This is how a pumper works. We got 2 concrete trucks that are all backed up. Now each one of these concrete trucks has 10 yards of concrete on it. We're gonna be pouring 130 yards, so we're gonna be going through 13 concrete trucks today. But they just back up to the back hopper, and then they can just start dumping in right there. And I don't know how it works, but it gets taken out this pipe, and then that pipe takes it down the boom, and then the boom dumps it exactly where we need it. And then the guy who's operating the pumper truck, he stands right there. He's got a controller on the front of him. and then the guy running the hose just guides him, and then he can just keep things moving right along. So today we got Jeff. Jeff said he's been running a concrete pumper for 28 years, so we're in good hands with experience. Jeff, you're supposed to leave this snow at home.
I tried.
Good thing we got 2 vibrators. Fired the one up, instantly started smoking. We'll get the other one going, I guess. Hopefully this one works. Otherwise, we're making a flash trip to the rental store. Try that one.
Okay.
Smoking? So in being creative calls, we gotta do creative things. We have our little 4-foot one that runs off battery, so Roman's got a rope tied to the vibrator, and he's just gonna lower the vibrator all the way down to the bottom, and we're gonna use this until Dad gets here with the big one.
Before we even started, I said, I hope this thing works. An hour into the process, we have ½ inch of snow. Both of our vibrators don't work. Someone is going to get the rental one, and hopefully soon. And that's where we at, with 1 lift out of 3 done.
As we can see, it's snowing quite a bit harder now. We got a nice slippery layer of snow, so the concrete truck drivers have a 17-mile drive here. It's kind of slippery for them. Luckily, pumper's already here. We did get a vibrator from Zach. He ran over to his house. He's got an 8-footer, which is going to work for this little wall. And then when we're on the top part of the wall, it'll be fine. Dad is on his way to the rental store right now to get the 15-footer. We're actually getting 2 of them. And we really just need that for the bottom. So in the meantime, we tried our temporary method and it was kind of working, but Roman decided to rip some 2x4s in half. So him and Justin are going along with big sticks and they're just shoving them down into the concrete and trying to do it that way. And then I've been going along the bottom of the forms with the Sawzall with no blade in it, so that way I could vibrate the bottom of the forms to try to get those air pockets out. I did try the big vibrator, but it turns your hands into a big fuzzy burn like almost immediately. So abandoned that idea and went with the Sawzall, but that's going to take a really long time. So the 15-foot vibrator should be here momentarily, hopefully, and then we'll be able to just start here and actually be able to do it right. Poured, we ran into some issues below me on our little stub wall. We didn't have a top to it because we thought we had enough built out, but it just came pouring out, so we probably lost a couple yards down in there. It made an absolute mess. And then with it snowing, and then I was running the vibrator, I got covered in concrete. So we've been really just trying to get this thing done. So we got everything poured now, so Roman's doing the last bit of vibrating, and then I'm going along. We have some jigs made on how far below the top of the forms we need to have our concrete. So I'm just running it along and I'm pushing all the excess concrete over, and if I get to the end and have too much, I just throw it over the side. And then I'm just getting everything nice and smooth, and once this starts to set up just a little bit more, we'll be able to come in with our anchor bolts, our wet set anchor bolts, and then we're gonna set those in, but we need to pull a string line before we do that, so then we have them in a perfectly straight line. So I'm plugging along. We have a lot of wall left, so we're gonna have to get moving here pretty quick, otherwise we're gonna start running out of daylight at some point.
So we kind of apologize too. It's been a little hard to do a lot of videoing on this stuff. Everything's kind of push, push, push. With concrete, you don't have much time to dork around, stick your finger up your nose or whatever. So, and then it's been snowing pretty good. Things are kind of slick up here. So it makes a little more paying attention where you're walking. You know, when you're walking on a board like this. So yeah, it's what we're against.
It got warm here for a minute, but the sun is already going down and we only have an hour and a half of sunlight. So we're concentrating all our effort on finishing the top of the concrete and then starting to figure out the structure for the roof. One of Cole's friends is already on his way with a light tower, so we have light when it gets dark, but we're trying to beat the cold and cover this whole thing up with some 2x4 sticks and plastic and start the heaters and hope they work. And since we have about 2 to 3 inches, probably 3 inches of snow, now we have to brush it off our boards.
I haven't stopped to eat lunch, or actually I haven't got off the wall at all today since we started. So I'm just coming in here to thaw out for just a second. My hands are starting to get pretty cold because I got sweaty in my gloves earlier. And then now you can see they were definitely wet inside of there. If camera will focus. Nice and wrinkly. All my fingers. Concrete water. Yum, yum, yum. Got it on that one too. And all those. Whoa, whoa. Woo. Everything is now poured. We got everything all screeded off on the top. So we got our heights exactly where we need them to be. So Dad is going along in the back right now. He's getting anchor bolts set in every 4 feet. And then Roman is getting some boards thrown over the top because we're going to get ready here in a little bit to be able to throw our tarp over. And then we can turn the furnace on and then we can start heating the inside of the area. We have about 30 minutes daylight left and the temperature is going to start dropping really, really quickly once it gets dark. So I'm going to set the camera down and we're going to focus on getting this thing tarped up so that way we can get it heated.
This is gonna work. Very exciting because it is 8 p.m. and everyone wants to go home. Well, I mean, it's not necessarily go home, but just get it done because tomorrow is a new day and want to have a good start for tomorrow as well. I'll also show you what's going on this side. We have quite a bit of extra tarp that would have ran straight this way, so basically this big of a corner that I'll be able to cut off and fill in over there where we have that gap. I guess never mind, the opening is gonna be so small that we're gonna use the little tarp that we have, which is a good thing because no need to cut a nice plastic if we don't have to. Last board that gets slapped on, and everything is sealed. Awesome.
I feel like an archaeologist right now. I'm down here in the corner where we had all the concrete spill over the top of our forms, and the stuff is starting to set up. As I work my way that way, it is a lot softer because that's the fresher stuff, but we actually had 2 spills. We had a little one earlier, and that little one is right here, and I'm getting down into it, and it's hard. So I feel like I get something exposed and I just keep whack, 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 and then I chip away at it. I was joking with Roman a little bit ago. Said that I got my practice digging out all this dirt the other day because I dug out dirt. I was all the way up to there on the farm the other day, inside here on the other side of the wall, and then over on that wall. So I actually think the concrete is a little bit better than the dirt. Take a look at that. We got the concrete out. It's a little embarrassing to say, but it took me about 3 hours to get that dug out, and while I was working on that, Zach, Cooper, Justin, and Roman got the entire roof system on, temporary roof system. They got it all tarped. We got the furnace running now, so it's blowing some nice hot air in here. We did put a tarp on the backside, so it directs it all this way. And then on the outside of the wall, they got 2 tube heaters running. And so we are getting this area, but we're turning it into a little oven, a cold oven, like a 60-degree oven. I don't know how many yards of concrete we lost on this side, maybe 1, 2. But then on that side, what would you call that, Roman? 3?
Probably 3.
Yeah, there's a pretty big mess in there. They were able to get it all raked away from the wall, which is good because we need the bottoms of the form to be clean, so that way we can pull them out, which is why we did what we did over here. But Roman's going through right now that the concrete has set up just a little bit. He's just trying to break it up in little chunks, and then it won't end up sticking back together, and then we can kind of turn this back into gravel or into some decent sized chunks, and then we can just take all that and then throw that in here once we go to fill all this back in. We can't just leave it because we already have the gravel at the grade that we needed it for the insulation for the floor. So it's a little unfortunate, but here's what it is. It could have been worse. I'd say overall everything turned out really nicely. Everything seems to be holding up, and we got heat in here. So we did what we were trying to do today, just maybe not as smoothly as we would have liked, but for our first time pouring something by ourselves like this, I say we did pretty good.
The final exercise for the day is gonna be cultivating this concrete, so it's not all together and just kind of apart in these lumps. Shouldn't take super long, but definitely gonna be a lot easier than dealing with it when it's hard.
12 hours later.
That's what farmers do in Iowa. They help each other, and they also come in and steal stuff from each other, which I'm doing right now to Brad. He is gracious enough to let us borrow his hose so we can install an LP tank at Cole's place, so we can fill up our...
Is that going there?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Don't be filming this as we blow up. That was right there, wasn't it?
Yeah, we don't want...
I broke that.
You don't want to be...
You don't want to blow up like that.
You should have waited. I had my lighter almost.
Yeah, we could have warmed this place up.
Was the heater in the back? We're gonna go install that hose and put this heater on. This heater is a beast. I am very thankful to Brad. He offered this because it's a brand new one that he got. It was still in the box, and when I called him this morning asking about the hose, he said, "Do you want this heater?" I'm like, well, if possible, yeah, we could definitely use more heat. And here it is, brand new. The box didn't fit in my little car, but without the box did. So here we are. Another 200,000 BTUs. How are you making out?
Well, I'll be at the house in about 45 minutes, and then it'll be time for lunch.
Ice cream today.
Yeah, ice cream today. Ooh. After getting some nice rest last night, I woke up sore, but here we are 24 hours post-pour. It seems like everything is holding up pretty good. We do have an issue with the seam of our tarp. The seam is right here in the middle, and some of it is starting to come undone, so we're losing a bunch of heat. So we're gonna have to try to figure out how we can get that addressed so we can get that cinched back together and then keep our heat in there. And then over on this wall, we have some tarp action where the tarp's getting pushed into the side of our wall, or a lot closer than what we'd like. So we need to do some work down there. And then we got a few more heaters. So we currently have a temperature on the inside of about 45 degrees. We would like to get that up to about 65 degrees. So we're gonna hook up a couple more diesel heaters. We have a couple more propane heaters. And then we have a giant radiant heater that we are also going to get hooked up. To be completely honest, we're not fully sure where the best place is to start with everything. So we're just gonna get started. So step number one is we are going to try to get this massive radiant heater down into the basement.
Sorry, it's not in the box because box wouldn't fit. Go down if you want.
Okay, I got it. Carrying this thing down here was not actually nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's deceptively light. There's really not a whole lot here, especially due to the fact that we do not have the bottom full of fuel yet. So this unit is brand spanking new. We actually, well, it's so new, we need to remember to take the cardboard out the front so that way that doesn't catch on fire. But this is not ours. This is one of Roman's friends, so thank you, Brad, for letting us use this. Our plan for this is to try to heat up this back part of the underground movie theater. We currently have the furnace running up on top. So this room, when you get up there, is probably 80 degrees on the top. And then as we work our way to the back, it slowly starts to get colder and colder. I did install a thermometer back here. We are sitting at 62 degrees right now, which is exactly where we want to be. But right now we have good sunlight coming through. So we're getting a little bit of a greenhouse effect, and it's probably helping us warm up about 10 degrees. When I got here earlier this morning, it was 45 degrees back here. So I'd say that sun is what's making the difference. So we're gonna try to get this thing filled up with diesel, and then we're gonna turn it in here. We may move it periodically to heat different parts of the wall, but then it should help us be able to get this back part of the room warmer once the sun goes down, and then we should be able to maintain that nice 60, 65 degrees throughout the entire inside of the underground movie theater. Filled her up with diesel, we plugged her in. Now all we gotta do is hit this button, and then boom, we should be pumping out some heat. Whoa, whoa. Nothing yet. Oh yeah, it smells like fuel.
It started firing a little bit. There we go. Oh, it's a dead heat.
Ooh. Ooh. Whoa, that, holy cow. That's about all you can do. I've honestly never seen a heater like this before. I've always seen the torpedo ones that blow it, but this one just kind of just slowly lets the heat out. And I don't know if the camera can pick it up or not, but you can see a lot of heat lines coming right off the top of this silver thing. That thing is pumping some serious heat. It's actually legitimately really hard for me to keep my hand right there. That's about as long as I can keep it there. That bad boy is cooking. This is an infrared heater, so from my understanding, it's supposed to heat up the objects in the room and not just the air, so then that way you also have the objects emitting heat, and then it's supposed to just be a more even heat. To me right now, heat's heat. As long as we keep it above 60 degrees, that's what we need, but I think this thing is going to do a really good job. On the other side of our walls, under the tarp, we're running a propane heater in this corner, and then we have a really big torpedo heater right here. This is one of Zach's. This guy is as big as the furnace is in the house. That thing's huge. Then if we go around the corner, we're still working on getting our tarp fixed on this side. We need to get this one pushed out just a little bit. But then we have another propane heater that we're going to be running shortly. And then we got another big torpedo heater shooting everything around the corner as well. Who are you talking to, Roman?
Hunters, local hunters.
Where?
Over there?
I just see an orange hat and orange vest floating in the air.
Yeah.
For our last step of getting the tarp all sealed up, Roman is out at the end of the telehandler right now where the tarps overlap. He's just sandwiching another board onto those so that way it holds the tarps together. And then we will have this thing all sealed up. We do have our light plant running right now, but for whatever reason, only one of the lights is wanting to turn on. We decided to start a little bit later today so that way we could rest from yesterday's adventures, which was much needed. And with the sun going down so early right now, it cut our day pretty short with the late start and then the early sun, but I'm not done for the day. I need to make sure that our heaters stay running, and they burn about 1 gallon of diesel fuel per hour. So in a couple hours, I'm gonna go back over to the farm and I'm going to fill everything up full of diesel fuel so then that way it can run all night. And then when I get up in the morning, I'm gonna run back out there and I'm gonna fill everything up with diesel fuel again. I was gonna go in last night to refuel the heaters, and then my brother called and he said him and his friends were gonna go look at the underground movie theater. So I asked him if he would refuel them for me, and he did. It got down to 6 degrees last night though, and it's been about 12 hours since the heaters have been refueled, so I'm gonna make a trip over this morning. We're gonna get everything fueled up again, and then they should be good for the rest of the day until tonight. I got here and I had some fires to put out right away. The outside torpedo heaters were not running. My 12-hour fuel checking interval, I think, was a little bit too long. Nothing was frozen yet, but they were out of fuel. So I threw a couple gallons in them quick so that way we could just get heat back on the outsides. And then now I'm gonna go around and actually be able to get things completely topped off. Inside the underground movie theater right now, it's cooking in here. That radiant heater, whew, that thing produces some heat. It's 85 degrees in that corner, which is good because that's where we have the opening flap to be able to get in on the outside. So this is the coldest corner, so we're really cooking the inside so that way that heat will transfer through the wall. So we're doing that intentionally. We have that placed over there. I ended up moving my thermometer to the other side. This is the absolute furthest point from the furnace that's sitting up there and the furthest point from that. And we're sitting just under 70 degrees. Looks like 68, 66 degrees. When it comes to our big concrete spill, it's been almost 48 hours since this got laid down, and this concrete is still, it's really soft, green. I guess it's good for breaking it out, but it's also really drippy in here because we're putting in a ton of heat and condensation with all the heaters. So we have a nice frost layer on the inside of our tarp, and then it melts and it drips all over you. So it feels like it's raining down here too. It's now about 10 hours later. I spent the day with my family. It's Daddy Cornstar's 60th birthday, so we celebrated that today, but everybody just went into the house and I'm gonna run back over and refill things back up. It's supposed to get down to like 9 degrees tonight, so it's gonna get really cold. We wanna make sure that we have fuel and everything. We have a really calm night tonight, which is nice. We don't have the tarp all flapping around and acting like it's gonna wanna blow off all the time, and it also helps retain the heat because we're not perfectly tight against the ground, especially on the other side, and usually the wind comes from where that red blinking light is. So just fortunate we don't have a lot of wind tonight. Sounds like it's supposed to pick up more tomorrow afternoon. Hopefully we don't get what they say we are going to, but I think we have everything cinched down good enough where if we get the wind, we should be able to have it hold. I'm rocking the headlamp tonight so that way I can use both of my hands. If you listen closely, you can hear the torpedo heaters are running. So they're doing their thing. We got one right down here, and we got one on the other side, and we got one on the inside. On torpedo heater number 1, this one's positioned right where our flap is to enter, and this is the coldest corner. The thermometer on the side says it's 42 degrees down here, but we're definitely way warmer than that over here because this thing's blowing some serious heat. And then right on the other side of this cold corner, we have the infrared heater heating up the inside of the wall. So when you actually feel the forms over here, they're warm. So it may be 42 degrees down at this height right here by our entrance flap, but our concrete's much warmer, and we really just care about how warm the surface of the concrete is, not necessarily about what the air is right here. I don't know how big the heater is on the other side, but this one's 190,000 BTU, and it seems like it sure burns through a lot more fuel than the other one. This one will be completely empty, while the other one's still about 25% full, and they appear to have about the same size diesel tank on them. Oh yeah, a little bit warmer over on this side. Now we can hear ourselves think. Now this one may look a little old, a little rugged, but it's doing its thing. You can see the area where it's dried out the dirt, and it's actually thawed this entire hillside right here. A big old chunk caved off right there. Might want to move that so that way it doesn't fall in the front. But this one is doing its job. We're definitely more protected from the wind over here than the other side. So it feels probably 5, 6, 7, 8 degrees warmer over on this side. Infrared heater is all fueled up. This is what I was talking about. Our flap corner is right on the back side of this. And so since we have this thing pointed over here, we're heating up the forms, heating up the concrete, and that heat is pushing its way through. That's why the forms on the outside are warm to the touch. They're really warm to the touch in here. See what our thermostat's reading now? Oh, we bumped up a little bit. 70 degrees. I'd like to say that filling up the heaters is more glamorous than it is, but it's really not. We are going on, well, we're over 48 hours of having our concrete poured, so we should be safe now for having it freeze. We want to go a week though, so that way we get to a 3,500 PSI strength of the concrete. Right now it's probably just over 500. We poured a 5,000 pound mix, but it's gonna take about a month for it to get there, and temperatures above 50 degrees, which we don't have right now. So we are going to artificially have the air around it be warm for a week, so that way we can get to that 3,500. Then we will be safe from the freezing and the thawing. So what I've been doing the past couple days, I'm just going to have to keep doing for another 5 days. For this being the first time that any of us have ever poured a basement, let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good was everybody was super calm and collected, and it actually seemed like we knew what we were doing. We had a game plan laid out ahead of time, and everybody followed their game plan to do exactly what they were supposed to do, and they did it to a T. So good job, team. And I don't know what we'd call the phenomenon of when you have a whole group of people working together, if one person gets riled up, it seems like that kind of bleeds into everybody in the group, and then everybody's riled up, and then nobody's fun to be around, and then when anything goes wrong, then it's just magnified to a multitude 10 times higher than what the problem actually is. But in our case, everybody stayed calm, so we didn't have to worry about any of that. We even had all of the tools laid out the night before, and they were all ready to go, so we didn't have to look for anything. And the part that I appreciated the most, we had the forms 100% ready to rock and roll. So when the mud started pumping, we were not trying to finish up a last second thing. So we were able to actually get a full inspection in 2, which was a super big peace of mind for me. Now let's talk about the bad. I'm sorry, as I say the good, the bad, and the ugly, I just think of the Western movie. Or however the theme song goes. I bought 2 15-foot long vibrators for this job. They were on sale for $135 a piece. I knew they were going to be cheap. I did not expect them to last for a very long time, but I thought they would last for maybe this job plus 3 or 4 more other jobs. Then we would basically be saving a few $100 because it costs $100 to go rent a single vibrator from the rental store. But we got the vibrators out, we opened them up. We had one laid out the night before, and the plan was we were just gonna run the one, and then if we didn't need the other one, then we could send the other one back. But we opened the one, had it laid out, and then literally 5 minutes into the concrete pour, go to turn it on, boom, smoke's out in 5 seconds after turning it on. So opened up the other one, did the exact same thing. So I ended up spending $270 on vibrators that both of them literally puked out in 5 seconds. And then we had to go to the rental store and rent 2 more. So we spent $270 plus another $200 in rental fees plus the trip there and back. So yeah, that didn't really work out the best, but we got it poured. Now the other bad thing that we had was our concrete was too wet. There was too much water in it, like way too much water. Like Roman wasn't happy. He gave the concrete ready mix plant a bad review because there was too much water in it. And there was a lot of water.
Negative review too. Yeah, if you're watching all this, is not because of us.
Now, the beautiful thing about doing your own projects is you can't put the blame on anybody else other than yourself. I should have been monitoring the concrete trucks coming in to make sure that they didn't have too much water straight from the ready mix plant, because then I could have rejected the truck. But I was up top working and, well, I did not monitor the trucks when they got there. So this one's on me, but I still want to sit and think about what actually went wrong here. When people are pouring concrete, they measure the flowability of the concrete by what they call a slump test. You'll usually just hear it called the slump of the concrete. So the slump of the concrete is usually from a 4 to a 6, so a 4-inch slump to a 6-inch slump. Sometimes it can be higher than that, sometimes it can be lower than that. Basically, the lower the slump, the drier the concrete, the less that it flows. The higher the slump, the wetter the concrete, the more that it flows. I do not have a device to actually test the slump of concrete, but this is kind of a makeshift one of how it works. If you want to see how it actually works, just look up a YouTube video on how to test the slump of concrete. But it basically works like this. So imagine that you go to the beach and you're making a sandcastle. You know, you take your cup or whatever you're using to make your sandcastle, you take your wet sand, you put it inside of it, you pack it all the way in there, and then when you turn it upside down, if you have the mixture just right, you can take the cup off and then you have a perfect mold of the inside of the cup. So imagine we get that mixture mixed perfectly right and we set it inside of our cup. And then when we take our cup off, we would be able to have our perfect little sand thing here. And then the way that it works is we would measure from the top of the device down to the sand. So since we pulled the cup off and nothing moved because we had it perfect, that would be a 0 slump. It didn't sag at all. But let's say we had it a little bit too dry, and then we pulled our cup off, and then it kind of sags down a little bit. Then we would measure from our measuring point down to the highest point of the concrete, and then we would see how much that it dropped. And then that would tell us, let's say it dropped 2 inches, so that means we would have a 2-inch slump. If it dropped 4 inches, we would have a 4-inch slump. If it dropped 6 inches, 6-inch slump. If it dropped 10 inches, we would have a 10-inch slump. So basically, the looser it is, the more flowable it is, the more it spreads out when you take the cup off the top of it, the higher the slump. So when it comes to concrete, we want it to be in that 4 to 6 range. That's kind of our sweet spot. 4 is going to be harder to work with because it's going to be drier, but it's technically going to be a little bit stronger. And then 6 is going to be more flowability. It's easier to work with. It's easier to pull around. And it also gives you a little bit more time to work with it because it doesn't set up as fast because it has a little bit more water in it. Now, typically speaking, unless you're putting in a special admixture called a water reducer, the only way that we can increase our slump, so the only way that we can make the concrete more flowable, is to add more water. The more water, the higher the slump. The higher the slump, the easier it is to work with. The easier it is to work with, the weaker the concrete. This is where we ran into a little bit of a problem because we think we had too high of a slump. When the concrete pump driver got there, I did tell him that we had a green crew and that we didn't really know all of what we were doing, but I did tell him that I assumed we would be running a lower slump or a drier concrete because of the temperature outside. If we have more water in it, it takes more time for it to set up, and especially when it's cold, it takes a really long time for it to set up, so that we'd want to run it drier. And so I gave him that information, and I assumed that he would take that information and relay that to the drivers, because ultimately the guy running the pumper, he does it all the time and he has way more experience than I do, and so he knows what's too dry coming in. So I guess this was probably my mistake. I just assumed he would have got it right into that sweet spot of where it needed to be able to pump into the pumper but still be as dry as possible. And on the first load, I think that he did, because when he was priming the boom, getting all of the soap stuff, the slippery stuff cleaned out of the inside, I looked at it on the ground, and to me it looked like a 6 slump, which was at the higher end of what we would want to work with, but it was still within the range of what we were looking for. So I thought it looked good, and then we were ready to start pouring. When we started to pour, it also started to snow, and then the hot water inside of the concrete was making a bunch of steam, and then all the snow ended up sticking to the rebar and then the sides of the forms. And then my brother was the one running the hose, and then both of our vibrators quit, and then so I ended up hopping outside of the forms with the reciprocating saw, trying to make sure we didn't get any honeycombing by trying to vibrate the outsides of the forms. And so basically I was just kind of running around trying to get stuff done. done because we were trying to put out fires. And ultimately, I did not go and look at any of the concrete trucks dumping into the concrete bumper. I'm learning in construction that assuming things is a dangerous practice, because I assumed that the rest of the loads would be just like the first one, but I did not notice that they were getting wetter as we were going until we were basically down to 2 trucks were pouring at the same time. And then I'm like, this is way too wet. So I ended up calling the batch plant and I said, hey, this concrete is too wet. Can you tell the guys to hold off on the water? And then he said, well, the last 2 trucks just came out, and those were the 2 trucks that were dumping. And so we already had all of our concrete there by the time I realized we were too wet. So the bottom of it is probably just fine, and maybe the top is the part that's too wet. And in all honesty, it's probably not as wet as I think that it is, because we were running the vibrator, and when you run the vibrator, you bring all the cream up to the top of the concrete, and the cream is the flowiest, the wettest part. And then we got 2 inches of snow during that time as well, and then it was also 25 degrees, so the water doesn't go into the concrete like it does when it's warmer. So then when we combine all that with the fact that the pumper is dropping concrete at 25 miles per hour, it makes it look like it's way more flowy than it probably actually is. So if I had to guess, I'd say we were probably around a 7 slump. Hold on a second, I just looked up a concrete slump training video. I think when he emptied out like his first primer through the pumper, I think that was a 5 slump. And then looking at what it looks like in the concrete truck here, I think we got a 6 slump. So we don't even have a bad. We should be good. I retract that statement. Is a 6-inch slump for a foundation wall too much? A 6-inch slump for a foundation wall is generally considered too high. Now, one thing about me is I like to overbuild things. So typically when you pour a foundation wall, you would go with a 3,000 PSI mix. Well, I went with 5,000. And according to this website right here, as a general rule, every additional inch of slump reduces concrete's compressive strength by about 500 PSI. So since we need 3,000 and I got 5,000, if we wanted a 4 slump and we got a 6, that means we increased it by 2 more slumps than what we wanted. So for every slump is 500 PSI. So with a 5 slump, we'd be at 4,500 PSI. With a 6 slump, we'd be at 4,000 PSI. We needed 3,000, so we're still 1,000 over. And we actually had 2 slumps that we could spare to still be at that 3,000. So we should be good. And then we have the ugly. We had a little bit of a blowout. Luckily, it was not a sidewall blowout. That would have been absolutely catastrophic. We had the top of the wall blowout on our 6'2" wall, on our little stub wall in the middle. We had 8 foot of form that was above that. And concrete weighs 120 pounds per square foot. And so when we had 8 feet above that, we had 1,000 pounds of concrete right above that, pushing force down. And so we thought we had enough stuff there to hold it back, but as soon as it started going with that wetter mix, it was like a river, a concrete river, just came pouring out of there. We lost like 3 yards on the inside, but the good news is we needed it in there anyway, because behind that 6'2" wall, we're gonna need to backfill that area anyhow. So now that we got all our concrete down there, we just have to break it up with a jackhammer, and then we'll just be able to throw it up over there as we're putting in our lime mix to be able to pack that in there. So we needed it down there anyway. It made, I don't know, a day's more work. Having never poured a basement before and learning pretty much all of it from watching YouTube videos, reading construction websites, and internet forums, I'd say we did a pretty good job. With that being said, I'm gonna call it a night. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.